Soul's Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love. Arise, our souls, Good morning, and welcome to the All Souls Kansas City Unitarian Universalist Church online gathering for October 17th, 2021. I'm Reverend Kendall Gibbons, the senior minister of our congregation, and I am away this Sunday attending a memorial service for one of my best friends. I'm very pleased to be able to welcome to our pulpit this morning my esteemed colleague, Mary Katherine Morn, President and CEO of our International Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The Service Committee is the social justice arm of our UU community, a cooperative endeavor of organizers, volunteers, and staff that work to make our tradition's values transformative wherever there is oppression or suffering in the world. Here are some of them to tell you more.
UUSC is an 80-year-old international human rights organization grounded in the principles of Unitarian Universalism and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
UUSC partners with over 50 locally led grassroots organizations around the world to advance human rights.
We work with communities affected by natural disasters and humanitarian crises, including ethnic minorities facing a campaign of genocide in Burma.
We partner with First Indigenous peoples to advance their right to self-determination in systematically addressing the loss of their homes, their livelihoods, and their cultures due to the impacts of climate change.
And we support the right to safety, dignity, and justice for Central Americans in Central America, along the migration route, and in the United States.
We can only do this work because of the support of individuals and congregations like you. Please join us.
These last months have highlighted the need for urgent, deep, and lasting systemic change. At UUSC, we believe that the transformational solutions we need, solutions that fundamentally shift us toward a world that prioritizes human rights, thriving communities, and a healthy planet, that these solutions come from grassroots leaders and communities most impacted by injustice. This belief is at the heart of UUSC's work. It fuels our partnership model in which we strive to listen deeply, follow the lead, collaborate with, and resource community organizations on the front lines of advancing change. I'd like to invite you to be part of advancing that change by getting to know some of these partners and joining us for this year's Guest at Your Table, UUSC's longtime annual program and our most significant source of financial support from congregations. Recognizing the enormity of today's human rights challenges and the importance of continuing the momentum for social change, our Guest at Your Table theme for this fall through spring 2022 is Now is the Time for Courageous Change. Through the stories our featured guests will share, with worship resources, religious education materials, and more, I invite you and your congregation to learn about our partners' priorities and visions for the future, with the goal of supporting this work, joining these partners in solidarity, and together with UUSC, making strides toward a world transformed by justice. Because it's plain that now is the time for transformational, comprehensive, justice-seeking, grassroots-led, courageous change. I hope you will join us.
Let us kindle our chalices this morning. With gratitude for the work of all who dedicate themselves to justice and right relations among people, to compassion and healing for those who suffer, and to humanity's ancient dream of peace and goodwill on earth. Where is the flame of your hope and dedication lighted this morning? Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
That wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world, the thoughts we think affect us all.
Hi, friends. In today's story, I want to introduce you to 4 people who live in very different parts of the world, but who are all working for fairness, respect, and justice. Even though we don't have a chance to meet them in person, I want you to imagine they are coming over for dinner with you and your family. Think of them as a dinner guest, telling you an interesting story over a big plate of your favorite food. All over the country, other kids like you are imagining the same dinner party and learning about the same people as part of a program called Guest at Your Table. The program is a chance to learn about 4 courageous people making a difference in their communities. This year, the 4 people we are going to meet are Adela, Mark, Chief Cherelle, and Suja. First, I want to introduce you to Adela, who lives in Guatemala. Over the past several years, the area Adela lives in has had a lot of people migrate or leave to go to another country. Many people are having to leave because there aren't enough jobs or enough food. Unfortunately, not having enough food to survive is not considered a good enough reason for someone to be welcomed into the United States, and many people are turned away and forced to return to Guatemala. Adela works to support people in the country so that the conditions are better and more fair. She also supports people who've been forced to return after migrating, who face the difficulty of returning to their homes after being away for many months or even years. Adela especially helps kids and teenagers who are returning to Guatemala. Next, I want to tell you about Mark, a scientist in the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands are a small chain of islands in the Pacific Ocean that are experiencing environmental damages, making it more and more difficult to live there. Because of climate change or human-made damages to the environment, the sea is at a higher level than it used to be, and flooding is becoming worse and worse. In his work, Mark teams up with members of his community in the Marshall Islands to collect information about the flooding and safe drinking water. This information is used to help build protections so that people do not have to leave their homes, and also help community members determine when flooding might become bad enough that they do have to move to a higher location or to a different country entirely. Some of these choices are hard to make, but it helps when people have all the information they need to be able to make the best decision they can for themselves. The third person I want to share with you about is Chief Cherelle, the leader of an Indian tribe in southern Louisiana, which can trace its ancestors back to the very first people we know of that lived in the area. Like Mark, Chief Cherelle is facing damages to her home from climate change and other human-caused activity. Being along the Louisiana coast, Chief Cherelle's community is losing land to the water, and the increase in salt water is also damaging trees and the land they use for hunting and farming. In the face of these challenges, Chief Cherelle is fighting for her people and lands. She works together with others to tell people what is happening to her community and advocate for support so they can build the protections they need to protect the land. Lastly, I want to introduce you to Suja, who's from Burma, which is also known as Myanmar. This is a country in Southeast Asia that borders China, Thailand, and India. Burma has a huge diversity of ethnic groups, people who practice similar traditions to each other. But the groups that have smaller populations face a lot of discrimination, which is limitations on their freedom and even danger. For example, Suja practices a different religion than the majority of people in the country, and because of this, he was prevented from completing school in Burma. When he protested and asked for a chance to continue with school, he was arrested and held in jail for more than a week. He was only a teenager when this happened. After he was let out of jail, he was afraid for his life and left the country. It was difficult to find services and build a new life elsewhere, but when he eventually did, he worked with others to create an organization supporting other refugees going through similar struggles. Together, they're creating a community that helps each other, even though they're far away from home. I hope these stories were a chance to learn about the challenges this year's 4 guests are facing and how they're fighting back for what is fair and what is right. Through Guest at Your Table, your congregation and other congregations around the country are helping to provide these guests with the resources to do their work. Together, we can make a better and fairer world. Thank you.
Every year during the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's Guest at Your Table program, we have a chance to learn about 4 people connected to the UUSC partner organizations, the Guest at Your Table. The program is a chance to learn about critical human rights issues around the world through stories of people who are deeply connected to the issues and the communities that they impact. You can think of the program as offering stories from the grassroots gathered for Unitarian Universalist congregations to tie us more closely together with issues on the ground and innovative change makers around the world. It's also a way to learn about the grassroots organizations we are helping through our support of UUSC. This morning, we will hear directly from this year's guests through videos they have recorded for us.
Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to the first of our 4 guests, Axel Fuentes. Axel is the director of the Rural Community Workers Alliance, the RCWA, a grassroots organization based in northern Missouri that supports the rights of immigrant and refugee workers in the meat processing industry. The meat industry got a lot of well-deserved negative press early on during the COVID-19 pandemic. You may remember the disturbing story about executives at an Iowa pork plant who had a betting pool about how many of their workers would contract the disease. These kinds of unjust conditions are something that long predates COVID, and that Axel and the RCWA have been working to combat for years. Here's a clip of Axel sharing about his work with the RCWA, including the response to COVID-19.
Rural Community Workers Alliance is a non-profit organization focused on organizing immigrants and refugees from the food industry, especially from the meat processing plants. What we do is to empower the workers to find the solutions to their needs or concerns that they are facing even in the workplaces or in the communities where they reside. So we empower them and we try to get them organized in order to stand up for their rights and in order to improve their lives in the communities. And we do this through empowerment trainings, leadership trainings, labor right trainings, education, or facilitating the tools that the workers need to address those needs or concerns that are affecting, especially in rural areas where most of the meat processing plants are located. Taking advantage of the vulnerability of these communities, they pretty much became these communities to be dependent of them, either because they are the biggest employers or because the economical vitality. Why we do this is because we know that immigrants and refugees are the most vulnerable to suffer injustices or abuses from employers or also in the community. We are really grateful that UUSC has been able to support us, and that's why we are able to continue our organizing efforts to improve quality life of people.
Ethnic minorities of Burma, also known as Myanmar, have long endured violence and discrimination at the hands of the Burmese military, including the 2017 genocide against the Rohingya Muslim minority, which forced more than 700,000 people to flee from their homes in neighboring Bangladesh. Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh still make up the world's largest refugee camp. As part of UUSC's Guest at Your Table program, today's guest is Myra Dagepa, a leader from one of Burma's ethnic minority communities, who's making important connections among ethnic groups to work together for justice and accountability in Burma. Here is a clip of Myra sharing her firsthand experience with military brutality as a member of the Karen ethnic minority, and what she's doing to support the people of Burma continuing to face the same kind of brutality today.
My name is Myra Dagepa, a Karen activist from Karen State, Eastern Burma. And I am directing the U.S. Campaign for Burma Now, an organization that is committing to raise the awareness about the ethnic minorities and religious minorities in Burma, because the Burmese military was still committing human rights abuses on a daily basis. And the biggest drive for our fight for the ethnic minorities right now was inclusivity, because while abuses is differ from one ethnic group to another, we also have ethnic minorities who are fighting against one common enemy, which is the Burmese military junta. And so now, after the coup, we have a lot of information coming out from the country. That is why we're trying to also making sure that the voices of the ethnic minority is not lost. And it is very important that no voices is drawn out, but rather amplified. So that is what we're trying to do.
Around the world, indigenous communities are facing the harshest and earliest impacts of climate change. As a result of rising seas, melting permafrost, and other impacts of the climate crisis they did little to create, indigenous communities are at risk of having to relocate from their ancestral homelands where they have lived for between hundreds and thousands of years. Today, we are highlighting the UUSC's partner, the Kiowa Island Community Organization, or KICO, which is supporting an island in Fiji to become more climate resilient. Here is a clip of one of KICO's leaders sharing about their important work.
The Kiowa Island Community Organization, or KICO, is the only non-governmental organization established and led by the people of Kiowa Island in the Pacific. In the face of climate change, KICO is helping prepare the people of Kiowa to be more climate resilient and ensure sufficient food is available if people from lower lying islands are forced to relocate to Kiowa higher ground. KICO is doing this through the strategic plan, community tree planting, and training community members in agro farming, which help yield climate tolerant crops and cleaner water. Our hope for the future is to improve standards of living and secure a resilient future for the generation to come. We want to thank you so much for your support. Thank you.
Communities in rural Nicaragua are grappling with widespread violence against women, as well as damaging farming practices promoted by multinational companies, which cause ecological damage and take over their traditional ways of life. UUSC's partner, Fundación Entre Mujeres, is working to combat both, including through a feminist farming cooperative that helps women access their own land and gain financial independence. Today's UUSC Guest at Your Table guest is Christian Guzman Merlot, one of the directors of FEM, who shares about her work with FEM in this short clip.
La Fundación Entre Mujeres es una organización feminista que trabaja con mujeres campesinas de 21 comunidades en el norte de Nicaragua. Es una organización que nace por el empoderamiento integral de las mujeres campesinas y desarrolla estas estrategias de empoderamiento ideológico, económico y organizativo para transformar esas relaciones de poder entre hombres y mujeres, pero también para que las mujeres campesinas puedan avanzar en su empoderamiento, en su autonomía, en sus condiciones, que transformen esas condiciones en las cuales así han sido asignadas por el mismo sistema machista patriarcal.
Did you know that Unitarian Universalists have been coming together for decades to support human rights through the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee's Guest at Your Table program? During this special program, UUs of all ages learn more about important issues and the groups, or partner organizations, UUSC works together with to advance human rights. Working with community-based groups like UUSC Partners is a great way to get help directly to folks after disasters like a hurricane, and helps make sure the needs that are most important to communities are being met. UUSC works with more than 50 partner organizations around the globe, together responding to humanitarian crises, gender-based violence, persecution of activists, climate change, and more. Guest at Your Table is a chance to get to know our partners and these issues better through learning the stories of 4 people connected to UUSC partners as if we were sharing a meal together. They are the guests in Guest at Your Table. After getting to know the guests, UU spread the word about human rights and raise much-needed funds for UUSC partners. From supporting youth leadership trainings, to amplifying their voices to world leaders, to buying needed supplies after a natural disaster, our partners request our help with all sorts of projects that make a difference in their communities. Through Guest at Your Table, Unitarian Universalists form a mighty web that helps support UUSC partners in their important work. Thank you for helping keep this important tradition going strong and joining us in the Guest at Your Table program.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Judith Cady, Minister of Religious Education here at All Souls. Our offering this morning will be given to support the wonderful work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Your generosity helps make it possible for the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee to serve those most in need of our help all around the world. Details for online giving are in the chat, or you can use our links on the website or mail a check directly. Our offering this morning will now be given and gratefully received. let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Perhaps you have heard or read the parable of the starfish thrower before. The tale comes from Loren Eiseley, mid-20th century scientist and philosopher, who recounts meeting a person on a beach after a storm which has washed thousands of starfish onto the shore. This person seeks out the living starfish and flings them back into the sea, where they may survive. After contemplating the seeming futility of such an endeavor in the face of a problem so large, Eiseley recognizes the hope and defiance in taking such action. Eiseley finishes his tale by writing, "I looked back across my shoulder to see the star thrower stoop and fling once more. And then I never looked again. The task we had assumed was too immense for gazing. All about us roared the insatiable waters of death, but we, alone and small in that immensity, hurled back the living stars." I recently visited a natural treasure about an hour outside of Boston, Purgatory Chasm State Park. The park is on land cherished and traditionally protected by Nipmuc peoples, a tribe of now 600 living in Massachusetts. The half-mile-long chasm is a treacherous hike. A slow pace is needed to navigate the incredible scale and danger of the chasm, the stones, large and small, that jut beneath and loom above the hikers. Stone is often considered a symbol of patience and the slow and steady pace of change. Boulders worn by elements and gigantic canyons carved out by tiny streams. I am reassured by the long view perspective of time that is revealed in stone. The stones at Purgatory Chasm, though, offer a different meaning. This immense breach in the earth was created in an instant, a moment of immediate, dramatic, disruptive, violent change. Scientists now believe the chasm was formed by the sudden release of glacial meltwater 14,000 years ago. Change sometimes happens like that. Stone is sometimes shaped by sheer and urgent power in an instant. Right now, these days, that image of change is more resonant than the slow, steady force of a small stream carving a canyon, though both hold important truths. In his reflection on saving the starfish along the ocean shore, Loren Eiseley writes, "All about us roared the insatiable waters of death." For me, this line brings to mind the creatures and plants and habitat lost in that dramatic moment of change 14,000 years ago at Purgatory Chasm. Water roaring from above, melted who knows how much earlier and working for who knows how long to find its escape, but forming the landscape in an instant. All about us roar the insatiable waters of death. Eiseley saw this from the perspective of the starfish's life and his own. We can see it in the indifference of a virus and the intimate violence of racism. We're at a rare time in history when so much is revealed by the rapid change and disruption of this moment. What's revealed isn't anything new. What's revealed is what too many of us manage not to see. Even as we've understood, as Dr. King reminded us, that what affects one affects all, many of us turn away. I believe not always because we don't care, but largely because we underestimate our power. And then often, those of us with various forms of privilege, we get comfortable, and our gaze remains fixed on those truths that soothe us. The shaking of so many foundations around us has forced us to see so vividly much more than many ordinarily see. Horrific inequity, systems designed precisely to maintain the castes among us, the complicity of silence, and the seductive comfort of our perceived powerlessness. The seductive comfort of our perceived powerlessness. These times are urgently calling on us to remember and use our power. That's right, power. Did you know UUSC's mission includes an affirmation of the inherent power and dignity of all people? For Unitarian Universalists, so accustomed to repeating the beautiful words of our first principles, it's easy to read right over that small but significant difference. It's not denying inherent worth, that's implied, but the addition of power is significant. At UUSC, we affirm the inherent dignity and power of all people. The power of compassion that demands our hands and minds and hearts be engaged in fulfilling the promise of human dignity and worth. The power of faithful imagination, the refusal to give in to the cynicism and powerlessness that tyrants and empires depend upon to thrive. These times are urgently calling on us to remember and use our power. Can you see it? Your power, can you feel it? Sit up a little straighter, take a breath. Can you feel your power? Not always, right? I know that's true for me, especially these days. These days, I'm feeling pretty small, less able than ever to accomplish anything. The roar gets inside me and I feel alone. I feel so much fear and grief and powerlessness. Okay, shake that off. I'm not going to ask you to deny those feelings, but I really hope we can all come to see something more. We've come here today because we know that religious community will hold us when we feel small and alone. Community will call us back to the power that we each carry, that we recognize in each other, that is called out from us in community. We show up, we are here together today because we believe that ministry, our shared ministry, will comfort us and confront us, will call us to our power. I invite you to call the name of someone who has reminded you of your dignity, your worth, and your power. And now call to mind memories of the power that has arisen from communities you are a part of, from this congregation. Prophetic witness in the larger community, calls for justice and healing, actions that were part of movements that brought about actual change. Friends, you have what you need to create a better world. We have what we need to enact courageous change. I'm inspired when I see this in communities and congregations. I am also deeply inspired every day by the fierce power of the grassroots partners who are the heart of UUSC's mission. We believe and know from experience that partnering with communities most deeply impacted by injustice is the most faithful and the most effective way to contribute to a better world. This is what UUSC's Guest at Your Table program has been highlighting for decades, offering us the chance to learn more deeply the stories of 4 of our grassroots partners. These guests invite us each year into more profound solidarity with them and the communities they serve. Our partner, Axel Fuentes from the Rural Community Workers Alliance, or RCWA, is organizing food processing factory workers in the Midwestern United States, building coalitions through organizers that speak the language and know the culture of the workers they collaborate with. Together, they are tapping into their power to demand safer working conditions that honor everyone's dignity. Axel says, UUSC's support has been one of the most important pieces for RWCA to be able to survive and make progress as a grassroots organization in the fight for the rights of all people. Myra Doggipa is a member of the Karen ethnic minority and director of the U.S. campaign for Burma. She's drawing on her experience as someone targeted by the Burmese military junta as a child to bring attention to the crisis happening in Burma today. She advocates for Burmese ethnic minorities and pro-democracy demonstrators with a vision for a peaceful country that has achieved a true democratic state where the power lies with the people, not with the military, and a country that finally realizes that inclusivity makes us stronger. Our partner, Maina Talia, from Kio Island Community Organization in the South Pacific, is working to make the communities of Kio Island resilient to the forces of climate change for the sake of future generations, and to serve as a refuge for those living on neighboring islands with even lower elevations. The island must provide agricultural support, moral support, and have climate-proof structures to ensure the continuity of our people, Maina says. Our vision is to build community resilience. UUSC is especially honored to be working with the Kio Community Organization as their first funder. Our last guest this year, Christian Guzman Merlot, is the co-director of UUSC partner Fundación Entre Mujeres, or FEM, organized by and for rural peasant women in Nicaragua. FEM is both a feminist farming collective and an advocacy network, linking 21 communities to bolster the economic, political, and social empowerment of women. The intersectional approach of FEM, seeing the connections between healing the land and healing the wounds of violence against women, offers a profound and necessary model of justice for the world. Christian shares that what FEM wants is a collective transformation in the communities of this country and all over the world. I am so grateful for what I learn every day about fierce power from UUSC's grassroots partners, such as Axel, Myra, Maina, and Christian. People who experience the intimate violence of oppression every day and still know their dignity and power. People who lead the way in enacting courageous change. These times are urgently calling us to remember and use our power. Friends, we have what we need to contribute to creating a better world. I want to thank those of you who are connected with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee through our shared work for justice and with your financial support. UUSC is a member-supported organization that receives no funding from the UUA. We cannot do this work without you. I hope that today's service inspires every one of you to become part of UUSC's justice-loving, justice-seeking community. In closing, I'd like to invite the voices of some of my UUSC colleagues to share a little more about the work we are doing in collaboration with you, our UUSC supporters, and our grassroots partners around the world. Thank you for inviting a guest to your table and supporting this important work.
UUSC is an international human rights organization. We're grounded in the principles of Unitarian Universalism and the Universalist Declaration of Human Rights. At UUSC, we seek to advance human rights, dismantle systems of oppression, and uphold the inherent dignity and worth of every human being.
Founded in 1940, UUSC addresses the needs of people who've been ignored or overlooked, working in places where the larger aid agencies often do not.
We are committed to building upon a legacy that is rooted in locally led initiatives, working hand in hand, eye to eye, and heart to heart with community leaders and grassroots organizations in the United States and around the world.
Today, UUSC has over 30,000 members, partnering with more than 40 grassroots organizations. Our programs span across 20 countries in Asia, the South Pacific, Central America, and the United States.
We do our work in 3 ways: through advocacy and action with UU congregations, UUSC members, and our incredible volunteers; through education and experiences with the UU College of Social Justice; and through grant-making, convenings, and collaborative research.
With our partners, we address human rights issues including disaster justice, emergency relief in the face of natural or human-made crises, climate action, working with communities who are losing their homes due to climate change, and criminalization, partnering with communities who are targeted simply for their activism or being who they are: immigrants, LGBTQ people, and ethnic and religious minorities.
And this past year, we have been working with our grassroots partners to meet the unique human rights challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis.
We know that UUSC members expect us to always be learning and be bold in our programming and our commitment to human rights.
We want you to have confidence in our work. UUSC is a terrific investment for your philanthropic support. Our budget goes far to accomplish so much for human rights in the U.S. and around the world.
And for 10 years running, UUSC has earned 4 stars, the highest possible rating from Charity Navigator, because of our effectiveness and fiscal transparency.
It is an exciting time at UUSC. We are grateful to you and to all of our members for your partnership and for putting your faith in us. You make our work possible. Thank you.
Thank you, UUSC supporters.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much for your support.
And thank you for putting your faith in us.
For all that you do to advance human rights.
We really appreciate it.
We couldn't do the work we do around the world without you.
Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna sit at the welcome table. We're gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. We're gonna sit at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. All kinds of people around that table. All kinds of people around that table one of these days, hallelujah. All kinds of people around that table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. No fancy style at the welcome table. No fancy style at the welcome table one of these days, hallelujah. No fancy style at the welcome table. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. Gonna sit at the welcome table one of these days. One of these days.
We close with these words from the scholar and prophet Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude, to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, its chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting.
Wasn't that a great service? I'd like to now invite you to our virtual community connection at the link in the chat box, should be appearing about now. We will start the conversation off with a brief tour of our new website and any other topics you'd like to discuss. So bring your coffee. See you there.